All right, now joining the show, we have on College Football Talk Daily. Go give them a follow on Twitter at College Football Talk Daily. Great college football account if you're a college football fan with recruiting, following your team, pretty much all the ins and outs about what is going on. But how you doing, man?
I'm pretty good. How about you? Thank you for
Uh,
having me on.
no problem, man. I'm pretty good. I'm excited to get you on, especially we're approaching bowl season right now, which is a pretty exciting time, one of my favorite times of the year. So I want to get you on to talk about some of the upcoming bowls, the coaching carousel in college football right now, and the Heisman Trophy. Who you think's gonna win? Who you think maybe got snubbed? But before we get into that, I kind of wanted, how did you kind of build up your account to get to where you're at now? Because I mean, it's a pretty big college football account. It's got a good following. How did you kind of start with this?
All right. Well, I don't know if you're familiar with AJ Brown on the Titans. He went to
Yep.
Ole Miss. But so my first tweet ever, I saw something on Reddit
Gotcha.
but a bunch of like verified reporters like retweeted it and were like laughing at me. But I ended up
Yeah.
getting like 80 followers off of that.
That's
And
that's
that's
pretty,
how it started.
it's a pretty good. And then just from there, it just kept building.
Yeah. I mean, a funny story was that there was one writer from Mississippi, and he called me a sorry little man with a laptop, and I'd never have more than 1,000 followers.
That's so. How is it with writers? Like, I mean, because I feel like if you start reporting on their team, especially like you're all over who you want to be hired at Oregon and just covering that, like I feel like writers probably get salty about that, especially if you start breaking news.
Mm-hmm. You'd have to pay for it. Like, for instance, like I get out there first. Like, I try not to be the first one to tweet anything that they. So, like for instance, the Oregon thing. Like, I know a little bit about like who I think is gonna get hired, but I won't tweet it until it gets out there.
Right, right. Now, so getting into kind of the coaching carousel, who do you think is going to get hired for that Oregon job since Cristobal left?
Um, so I think it's gonna be Dave Aranda from Baylor.
Okay.
Um, he's had a contract extension on the table for about 2 weeks and hasn't signed it. So I think if he was gonna stay, like people were saying, he probably would have just signed it already.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I did see today that the Oregon source that I follow said that he thinks there'll be a coach either by tonight or tomorrow morning.
Okay.
So
Who
I'm not sure when this is gonna come out, but it could be soon.
now? So that's who you think it's going to be. Who would be like your all-time chaos pick, where everything just goes
Urban Meyer.
Urban? Okay, that because so I'm a Notre Dame fan, and I thought the same thing when Brian Kelly left Notre Dame. That obviously I thought it was going to be like a guy like Luke Fickle, or they'd promote Freeman like they did. But I was thinking like the chaos pick would have been Urban Meyer to come to Notre Dame, but him going to Oregon would be unreal.
Yeah, I mean Marcus Freeman's awesome. First of all, I love him in Notre Dame.
Hmm.
I watched his like thing and walked in the room and all his players went and like that is a player's coach. I love that man.
Yeah, it's
But Oregon, yeah, definitely Urban Meyer would be the guy.
yeah, that would be so. Baylor then loses their coach. Who do you think Baylor would promote within if their head coach leaves, or do they look to try to poach another coordinator or head coach from another program?
Well, I mean, this year you never really know, right? Because this has been a
Right.
crazy carousel. But if I had to predict it, they'd probably promote Jeff Grimes, their offensive coordinator.
Hmm.
It seems that he's ready to be a head coach, so he'd probably get promoted.
Nice. Now, what about the other coaching moves that have kind of been made the past week? Like Brent Venables going to Oklahoma, Cristobal going to Miami, and then some of the earlier ones too, like the real big ones, like Kelly going to LSU and Lincoln Riley leaving Oklahoma. What was the biggest surprise for you, and just kind of what you thought about those big moves?
I think the biggest surprise had to be Lincoln to USC because that happened. Like, I mean, I saw a tweet like, "Oh, Lincoln Riley in talks to be USC head coach," and like an hour later, it was like Bruce Feldman, like Lincoln Riley announced as USC head coach.
Yeah.
So I feel like that happened so quick. I think Brian Kelly finding a new family was pretty crazy with his new Southern accent.
Just a bizarre move, but just a really bizarre move.
Oh yeah. Did you see the contract that LSU offered Jimbo Fisher?
It was what, 125 million,
Yeah,
8
for
years.
10 years, and he said no.
That's I'm actually surprised. I'm surprised LSU reached out like within conference. That guy like Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't
I
know what.
also like. I was talking to my co-host last night. Do you think Jimbo Fisher is worth that kind of money?
I mean, he's probably one of the top 10 coaches in college football, I'd say. But with what he's done at A&M, I don't think he's worth that money currently. If it was him when he was at
Yeah.
Florida State and looking to get a new job, then I'd say
Mhm.
yes. But I mean, with what he's done at A&M, I mean, he's got the win over Bama this year, and then a few years where they were ranked. But other than that, I mean, he hasn't really come close to making a college football playoff appearance. So I would say no.
Yeah, so that's what I agree because I was saying like that's a lot of money to invest in a guy who like went 8-4 this year. Like,
Well, how nuts do you think that Lincoln Riley contract is? 110 million. They buy both his houses for 500,000 over asking price or over market price.
mhm.
Buy him a $6 million house in LA, and then unlimited access to the private jet. I mean, that's just I've never seen a contract to that or like a deal to that magnitude really ever.
Yeah, well, I think contracts are shifting. They're gonna be more like that in the future. But I
Mhm,
think at least with Lincoln Riley, he's young enough to where like maybe you try to make him like a USC lifer after this. Like, if he's
mhm,
only 38, so if you lock him in
right.
now and like get on his good side, maybe maybe he signs like a team friendly deal in the future where he doesn't like screw you over. But
Yeah,
did you see the whole Smoker Gate?
Smokergate. Oh, yeah. So I saw it very vaguely on Twitter. What was the deal with that?
All right, so there's this guy in Oklahoma. I believe he's an Oklahoma booster. His name's Travis Davidson, and he lent Lincoln Riley two big smokers to smoke meat for like recruiting parties and events. Like, and
Okay.
so obviously Lincoln Riley up and left in the middle of the night, and he never returned the smokers, and he sold the houses with them in it.
No. Okay. So because I remember seeing like people looking for the smokers, and then they ended up getting recovered, but I didn't know the full story about it. That's crazy. That might be the biggest snake move by
Yeah,
Riley in this whole process. Is not returning the
right.
smokers.
He's a meat criminal.
He really is. That's outrageous. Jesus.
I
Um.
couldn't believe it. That was pretty funny.
So then, what are your thoughts? What's the next step for a guy like Manny Diaz, in your opinion? Because I don't think he's just had an absolute shit show at Miami. He had the Temple job that he
Mhm.
kind of blew off. He pretty much blew off. And then there were like reports, I think it was last year or the year before, maybe, that the players didn't even really respect a guy like Manny Diaz. So what's your thoughts with him with when he's got such a bad rap behind him?
Well, I think I actually saw this year that I thought the players actually kind of liked him. I mean,
Hmm.
but maybe I was wrong about that. But I saw a lot of it this year after what happened with the Cristobal thing. So maybe they kind of just felt bad for him because he did kind of get screwed a little
Yeah.
bit. So
I
maybe
mean,
they
the
just
way
kind of felt a
Miami
little bad
handled
for
that
him.
was the worst. They handled it in the worst possible way.
Oh yeah, like I mean, can you imagine like being in a relationship with a girl and she's like, yeah, like I'm dating him, but like if this guy says yes, like you're out of here.
Right. It was, and especially because they didn't have an athletic director. It was pretty much the
Yeah,
school and a bunch of boosters just pretty much running wild. Like, "Hey, we're pursuing Cristobal, and then Manny Diaz, we're gonna keep you around unless, like you said, unless Cristobal says denies us." Which it just
yeah, right.
a wild sequence of events.
Yeah, I think he'll become a defensive coordinator somewhere. Like
Mhm.
a place I'd probably watch for him is Penn State. If they don't, I think they're gonna hire someone else, but I
Okay.
feel like he could be a backup option because they
Wouldn't be
need
a
a
bad.
defensive coordinator because there's just took the Virginia Tech job.
Yep. Now, the final coaching job I want to talk to you about is from my home state, Connecticut. Jim Mora coming to UConn. What are your thoughts
Uh-huh.
about the whole about the just that move in general? Because I was kind of shocked about it. I mean, I didn't think we were going to get a high. I mean, obviously, you see guys like Edo, they won't be coaching. Like they lose their job. You're hoping like an Edo comes to UConn, but that's the absolute long shot. But I don't think Moore is a bad hire. I was wondering what you thought about that.
He's definitely better than Randy Edsall. I mean, that's a start, right?
I despise everything Randy Edsall is about because he brought them to being such a great program back in the mid to late 2000s, and then like he left them high and dry to take the Maryland job and called that his dream job, which I think was even the more painful part. Didn't fly back on the team plane with that UConn team after they lose to Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl. It was just a whole shit show of events, and him leaving brought in Pasqualoni and Diaco, who were two of the worst head coaches I'd ever seen. Diaco was not I would have rather had Pasqualoni than Diaco, but both were terrible options. And then Edsall returns and just is coaching just an absolute it just was a shit show all around.
Yeah, so I have a personal gripe with Randy Edsall, and then I'll get to Jim Mora. But so my best friend, he actually helps out the account sometimes. He was committed to UConn for 7 months.
Really?
And 17 days before National Signing Day, Randy Edsall told him like, "Hey, buddy, like you don't fit my defense. So like you should probably go somewhere else."
Wow. What position? Like a linebacker, D lineman?
Yeah, he was a linebacker.
That's crazy. That's such a scum move.
Yeah, so he ended up going to a FCS school where he started for like 4 years. But and after how UConn turned out, he says now he's like I don't really hold any like regrets for it, but like I still hold Randy Edsall accountable for it.
I mean, there's FCS schools in the state of Connecticut that would beat UConn with Sacred Heart and CCSU, and like they played Holy Cross this past year and got beat by 2 scores. Like their quarterback, Holy Cross quarterback, ran all over UConn. They lost to a very bad UMass team, and their one win was against Yale. So I mean, when you those are your like when you think you have one winnable game against an FCS school or 2 winnable games against FCS schools, and you cannot win both of those, that's a brutal thing as a Division I FBS program. So, I mean, it's going to start with recruiting, and I think Mora really has started on the right path with recruiting. They're going after a lot of grad transfers right now to kind of bridge the gap between Edsall's recruits and Mora's recruits for the next year, which I think is a pretty good thing to do.
Yeah, I think UConn, it has potential to be a decent program. I mean, obviously it's got some things working against it because like the facilities aren't great, the stadium's far from campus.
Right,
but
that's a big thing.
There's that. Yeah, but like there's definitely things like, I mean, Connecticut's not all that big, so it's not the furthest from campus.
Right.
But yeah, I think UConn could be good. Jim Moore is he's probably like one of the better hires they could have gotten because I mean, like you said, you're not going to get you could wish for Coach O, but like UConn's going to be a hard job to sell. I did see that they're going to play UMass every year from now on for a few years.
Yeah, the Cum Bowl.
I mean, Jim Moore could get that. He could be winning that game.
Yeah, which would be awesome because like if you can pretty much win that quote unquote rivalry every year, that would just be a big thing, especially because it's between 2 schools that are local. That if you're recruiting a kid from the Massachusetts or Connecticut area, they may be picking off of which team is better. I mean, neither of them are very good, but if you're able to secure that rivalry and keep winning year after year, that would be a huge thing.
Yeah, like as long as you can say like you're solidly better than UMass as UConn, like then you're probably gonna win some of those battles because you could say like, well, we're the better school.
Yeah. Now, what is your thoughts on what I think is the best rivalry game in college, the civil conflict between UConn and UCF, started by Bob Diaco?
I think it's comedy just how like it's just not really it's a kind of rivalry and people just it's funny. I don't know.
I loved how serious he took it because he started it without even like really letting UCF know that he was starting it. It was just like, we're starting this rivalry game. We're going to play you guys and we're going to have this trophy. And then the trophy just disappeared after one of the years.
Yeah. So I actually had a UCF punter who played in one of the things, and he was like, I didn't even know it was a rivalry game until after the game. And I was like, yeah, like that's how most people are with it. Like,
yeah, me and my dad joke about it every year. Like we get super excited for civil conflict week and just messing around with that because even like we read it in the Current when that first came out. And we're like, this is a joke. what is this? Like, because Diaco always was trying to insert like his own rah-rah culture to the program. It seemed so fake and was so fake too, which was
Yeah.
the worst part. But so I've got a couple bowl games pulled up that I think that are pretty intriguing ones. I'm not going to go through the whole bowl game schedule with you, but I want to kind of get your thoughts on some of these games because I think this is a great year for matchups with bowl games. I don't know how you feel about that, but I think it's one of the better years.
Yeah, I think there's some really good ones like Ole Miss. I forgot who they play. That's a
They're
good game
playing
though. I
Baylor.
remember that was one. Yeah. Ole Miss Baylor. That's gonna be like a battle of styles, kind of like because they're kind of polar opposites.
Yeah. So the first game
Um,
I've got up is UTSA versus San Diego State, which it's an 11-2 versus a 12-1 team, 2 conference champs. I wasn't sure how you thought that was going to go because UTSA dropped a bet, like they dropped to North Texas at the end of the year to not go undefeated. I think this is going to be one of the more interesting group of 5 games.
See, I see what you're doing because you're my pick'em. So you're just trying to get my picks so you could sabotage me.
I've put my picks in already. I'm not changing my picks. I've got my picks in. I'm not straying away from those.
All right, yeah. So I think San Diego State's gonna win.
Okay.
I've been high on them all year. So, and UTSA coming off a loss, I think that there's gonna like a loss hangover, and I think San Diego State wins.
Yeah. Next one, Houston versus Auburn. I think this is another interesting matchup because you've got Houston, who I think went 11-2. They were in the AAC championship versus a 6-6 Auburn team that took the number 1 team in the nation to the wire in the Iron Bowl. So, it looks like if you go by record, Houston, it doesn't look like it should be a bowl game with that five game differential. But I mean, I think Auburn's going to win. I'm not sure with that.
Oh, I think Houston wins.
Really?
Yeah, I think Houston wins. I think I had them winning by 5 or 7. I'm writing an article on some of the bowl games. I think I had them winning by 5 or 7.
Okay. All right. Interesting. That's one I'm definitely excited about. Next game is one that I think will be pretty good because it's 2 different styles of play. You've got Iowa State facing off against Clemson. A lot of rumors. I don't know what your thought is about the Matt Campbell. I know his name's kind of been thrown around when every coaching job opens up. So you don't know if this could be Matt Campbell's last game coaching the Cyclones. But Clemson versus Iowa State, how do you think it's going to unfold?
I think Iowa State wins. I think Clemson's having a real down year. I don't think that it's the end of like the dynasty or anything, but I don't think they're going to recover it this year.
Right.
I think they've lost the defensive coordinator. They're going to lose their offensive coordinator to either Duke or Virginia. So I think that they're just going to be without 2 coordinators. And Dabo Swinney is going to be. I mean, they have the talent to win, but I think just the coaching from Matt Campbell is going to be too much.
Yep. That and just I think the physicality is going to be a big thing too with Iowa State running the ball too. One of the best offensive lines in the country. Next game, we've got Iowa facing off against Kentucky against I think a really good Kentucky team this year, led by Will Levis, who was fun to watch this season. So, who you got in this game?
In this one, I have Kentucky. I'm a big Will Levis guy myself. Did you see what he said about the Kenny Pickett slide?
I loved the tweet. He's like, I think it's unfair that this happened. He's like, it's unfair that this all transpired. He goes, when I say that, I mean, it's unfair that Kenny Pickett's able to do that, that he was defending Kenny Pickett. It was the crux of the tweet, but yeah, it was awesome. Levis has been a fun guy to watch and follow this season.
I love him. I love everything about the Kentucky. I like Wandale Robinson too. Like, he called it slide gate. That's what he called it. That was just
yes.
Yeah, that's too funny to me.
And then so getting into some of the New Year's Six bowls, Notre Dame versus Oklahoma State. I believe the spread in that game is 2.5. When I recently checked for FanDuel, but straight up Notre Dame versus Oklahoma State. I'm curious how this one's going to turn out because you've got Notre Dame under a new head coach and Oklahoma State coming off of a conference championship loss. So this could go one of 2 ways for both teams, and it's really, I think, going to be interesting how both teams come out of the gate.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame will win just because I think the players want to start the Marcus Freeman era off strong. And I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of Notre Dame players are going to feel slighted. They got left out of the playoff. So I feel like they're going to try to make a statement.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I don't know what are so watching that Oklahoma State Baylor game. It was brutal watching Oklahoma State have, I think, 7 plays within the 2-yard line and get 3 points out of it in the second half, and 4 of them coming on the their very last possession of the game where they weren't able to score. I mean, that Baylor front seven's legit, but not being able to score from the 2 on 7 plays is that's you got to be able to punch it in from there. I understand the starting running back was out, but it's you're right there.
I had Oklahoma State as the last leg of my parlay for just money line. And
Really?
I was at a wedding, and my friend, my co-host Matt, was just texting me, and he was like, "All right, they're on the 2 again," and he was like, "All right, first down, second down, third down," and I was like, "How many times is this gonna happen to me?" Like,
That's brutal. Oh my god. That's
yeah, it was miserable.
Now we've got the game you mentioned earlier. This one I think is going to be super exciting. Baylor versus Ole Miss. Like you said, two different styles of play clashing, and possibly I don't know what your thoughts are on Matt Corral, but I think one of the best quarterbacks, a top 3 quarterback in college football, playing against a pretty good Baylor defense.
Absolutely, and the crazy part is like I think that Ole Miss is going to replace him with Dylan Gabriel, the UCF quarterback that's transferring.
Oh, did he officially transfer there? Or is he still in the portal?
No, he's still in the portal, but I'm pretty sure he's going to end up at Ole Miss, just from what I've heard. So I think that they're going to be excited next year too. But I think that Matt Corral is definitely awesome, and I think they're going to beat Baylor.
Yeah, that Baylor defense is fun to watch, though. Like I said, especially watching those stops, watching a guy like Seka Ika just making plays with how fast he is at D tackle, and just that Baylor team is just a blast to watch. But yeah, Ole Miss with Corral is going to be they're a scary sight. Next game, Ohio State versus Utah. I think Ohio State's going to roll Utah here just because missing out on the playoff. They're not going to be too happy about that. And just they want to just prove themselves going into the just to end the year, especially after losing to Michigan too.
I disagree. I think Utah is just a too physical of a team. I feel like Utah is just Michigan, but like out west. I feel like they do everything that Michigan did well. The only thing I'm gonna say is that they're not gonna get us hyped up for the game because like that was Michigan's Super Bowl. So like,
yes,
obviously like you got to give them some points because obviously every player was given 100%. Like there was no half-assing plays during that game for Michigan.
Yeah, I don't know if you tweeted it or somebody else tweeted it, but they made a great point that how much that with Ohio State they've won the past 8 years before that. One game for Michigan affected their recruiting more than 8 years of Ohio State winning in that game, which is a pretty wild statement, but a pretty true one. And just the culture around Michigan too, like that win was so big for them. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that was me saying. I tweeted that on my lunch break actually at work, but it's crazy how like even like the narrative around Jim Harbaugh, like last year he was like on the hot seat, and now like you haven't heard anyone mention like the thought of firing him. Like he won the Big Ten championship, and like his seat is cooled off immensely.
Yeah, that win that'll earn him, especially making the playoffs. That earns him another 3 or 4 years, I think.
Yeah, I'd say at least another 2. Because I mean, look at Coach O. He got canned after a national championship. Like,
yeah, that's fair. Another Big Ten team playing Michigan State versus Pitt. You got a Heisman finalist in Kenny Pickett playing against a guy that was running back that was almost a Heisman finalist, I think, in Kenneth Walker.
Yep. I think Pitt's gonna win, and I'm not saying that just because Kenny Pickett's supposed to come on the podcast, but he's from around here, so obviously I root for him because he's a New Jersey guy. So I hope Pitt wins. I'm not sure if they beat Michigan State though, because Mel Tucker. I love everything about the way he coaches. Like strong defense, like physical run game. Like hey, I think you're a lineman where you play, right?
Yep.
So you have to run you have to love the physical run game. Like just we're just gonna ride down your throat and you can't stop us.
Yeah, they're a fun team to watch, especially like you said, as an O lineman, they're a fun team to watch play. But yeah, that's kind of two different styles clashing too with the way Pickett's been playing. But I'm excited for that interview though with you guys with Pickett, which will be cool.
Yeah, it should come. We were trying to get it before Saturday, but like we emailed like the school or whatever, and they were like, he's a little busy this week, and we were like, yeah, it's kind of understandable. He has a
Yeah,
Heisman ceremony Saturday,
that's
so we're
crazy.
aiming for next week.
Awesome. Now getting into the playoff matchups, you've got number one team in the country, Alabama, playing against number four, the AAC champs, Cincinnati. How do you think this one unfolds?
I really wish I could say Cincinnati had a chance. Like I really like them, but I think Alabama probably rolls them.
Yeah. Now, do you think it's more than 14 with the spread?
Yeah, I'd probably say around like 20 is what I'm thinking. Just I don't think I think Cincinnati's defense is actually going to be fine.
Hmm.
I'm just not sure their offense is going to be able to score at Alabama.
Right. It's. I was talking to a
Um,
few of my coaches up here. One of them thinks it's going to be. He thinks it'll be closer than it really is going to be. Like I said, I agree with you. I think it's going to be around the 21, maybe 24 mark, rather than 14. But it would be cool to see a Cincinnati win. But
Oh
Bama's just
yeah.
they're hitting stride right now, and that's a scary sight.
Well, I think Cincinnati could win if a few things happen.
Mhm.
Nick Saban has a medical emergency in the first quarter.
Okay.
Um, Bryce Young breaks a leg,
Okay. Possible.
possible. Yep, and then a few missed field goals. So those three things happen, and maybe
Well, that
they
missed
win by
field
like
goal
three.
one's about as accurate as it can get because you know how it is with Bama kickers. It's about as
Yeah,
inconsistent as it gets. So that's the most likely of the three. I mean, Saban's also not
yeah,
a
right.
young guy, so that one could come into play too.
Yeah, we used to have a joke on our podcast when Bill Snyder was at Kansas,
Yeah.
and it was like every time there was a kick return, we'd always say it looks like he was to have a heart attack because he like I think at one point they had like one kick return touchdown in the last like 4 years.
Yeah.
Then someone returned the opening kick, and he looked like he was ready to like fall over.
So then the other game, the other semifinal match, Georgia versus Michigan. I think this is the last team that Georgia wanted to play, other than Bama again. This Michigan team looks tough right now, especially after rolling Iowa. Um,
Mhm.
even though, with that being said, with all of that, I do think Georgia wins. Where do you fall with this game?
So I think I tweeted the other day. I think Michigan wins by 10 because I think that they do what Georgia does, but just
Mhm.
slightly better in like the running the ball. And I saw a tweet yesterday that Michigan leads the countries in scoring plays over 40, 50, 60, and 70 yards.
Okay.
So I feel like they're a lot more explosive than they get credit for. So I think they're going to beat Georgia. But I don't know. It's really hard to tell. But I just feel like I'd take a power run team from up north just because it's a lot harder to run the ball in like November up north than it is in like
Yeah.
the South. So I feel like Michigan has like a more of a mental toughness than Georgia does.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun game, I think. But you get two of the best D linemen in college football playing in this game too, which is like I said before, as no lineman, you key in on watching guys like that. So being able to watch
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Davis and Aiden Hutchinson in the same game, it will be a very exciting opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Aiden Hutchinson is actually like so. I saw him in person. We went to Penn State, Michigan,
Yep,
and he's actually unblockable. Like what he does to offensive linemen is unfair.
it's ridiculous. It's just crazy the
Like,
type of player he is and just how physically imposing he is on Big Ten offensive linemen, which some of the best in the country. It's scary, and I'm
he reminds me of J.J. Watt, to be honest.
yeah, I'm excited to see him play against SEC O linemen, and especially if they make the national championship against Alabama. I'd love to see him
Mm-hmm.
versus Evan Neal.
Oh yeah,
That would be the
yeah,
ideal matchup.
yeah. I love offensive lineman matchups like that as well. Like one of my favorite players of all time, Notre Dame guy, Big Q.
Hmm.
He's awesome to watch. Like he's like the most exciting lineman there is. Like
Yeah. So you've got the Natty as Michigan versus Alabama. What goes down in that game?
I think Alabama wins. I want Michigan to win, right? But here's my
Yeah.
theory. I think I'm a Rutgers guy. So
Yep.
if Michigan plays Alabama close, then I could say that Rutgers played Michigan close on the road, which means they would have played Alabama close.
It's a working theory. It's a good one. If you're a Rutgers fan. But yeah, that would be.
It's a
I mean,
theory.
if I was a UConn fan, I kind of live by that theory when they play a decent team close. So if they put and Rutgers played a really good team close this year, but so you think it's going to be a close game though in the national championship?
I would probably say Alabama. It's hard to tell because I don't like obviously a lot can happen from now and then between injuries and
Right.
stuff. But as of right now, I'd probably say Alabama by 10 or 14.
Okay. Now, before I let you go, I do want to talk a little Heisman with you. The top four set, we've got
Right.
Bryce Young from Alabama, CJ Stroud from Ohio State, Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan, and Kenny Pickett from Pitt. Who was left out and who made it that you think shouldn't have, or you think it's about as perfect as the committee could get it?
Well, I see a lot of people saying Will Anderson got left out from Alabama,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like they probably just didn't want to put two people in from the same school. So you had to pick between Anderson and Bryce Young, and obviously Bryce Young had the better year. Also, Aiden Hutchinson's really like him and Ajabo, I think, are the only two like real pass rushers on Michigan.
Yeah.
So I feel like even though Hutchinson's stats aren't as impressive, he gets double teamed and triple teamed a lot more than Will Anderson does.
It's
So
kind of
he's
like
putting up
the Aaron
similar
Donald
stats.
effect. When Donald wins Defensive Player of the Year, but his stats aren't as good as other players, you have to take into account that he's facing higher double team and triple team percentages than a guy like a TJ Watt that's able to come off the edge a lot harder. I think taking that into consideration is a huge thing, especially with Anderson being a linebacker. Like his tackles were a lot more and he had more sacks, but like you said, the way Hutchinson plays in a one-on-one scenario and even in double teams is outrageous.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like Hutchinson gets chipped by running backs a lot more, and he gets like a lot more double teams off the edge. So, and also teams, it's a lot easier to run away from like an end because you could just,
Yeah.
if they're lining up on the left, you run right, and you just kind of ignore them for as much as you can, just try to make sure it doesn't make an impact. A
Right.
linebacker, it's kind of hard because they have a lot more space to make up.
Mm-hmm. Now, of the three offensive guys that made the three quarterbacks that made it, was there anybody that you thought should have maybe been put in over those three?
I feel like if one was to not make it, I feel like Stroud maybe shouldn't have made it because he
Mm-hmm.
struggled early on in the year. He did obviously finish very strong, but I feel like
Yeah.
if you were to knock someone, it'd probably be him. Because I feel like Pickett, he had an amazing senior year. You got to show him some, even if he's not going to win, just inviting him, show him like you recognize that he had a great year. And I think Bryce Young's going to win it.
Gotcha. Now, who would you have put in over Stroud?
Well, if I was going to pick someone, it would have been Anderson. He's definitely like the fifth guy. I feel like he probably should have been in, or Kenneth Walker maybe, but he kind of had a stinker. I forgot who they played where he didn't put up a great game.
Yeah.
But he only had like 60 yards or something like that. So that's probably what did him in.
Yeah, that's always exciting. This is the 1 year. I mean, I think Young is probably the favorite, but I think what is exciting about this year, in my opinion, was that the Heisman isn't official. Like with the Joe Burrow year, you knew he was going to win it. Past few years, you've kind of known who was going to win the Heisman. The past few years, the college football playoff was decided, but well before championship weekend. And I think it was exciting this year that a lot of it just came down to the very last week. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but I think this year just had a lot more intrigue with games being bigger, championship games meaning a lot more, and just made this season one of my favorites as a college football fan.
Oh yeah, this year was so unpredictable. I feel like also like ranked teams like 1 through 4 were losing every other week. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah, it was.
So yeah, this is definitely a fun season.
And then especially seeing teams that typically weren't, like Michigan wasn't even ranked to start the year, and they're making the playoffs. Cincinnati's, it's the first group of 5 team to make it. One of the things that I was super excited about, I'm not even an Arkansas fan. Arkansas was pretty good this year. Usually they were like a doormat in the SEC. Now they were a ranked top 25 team. Like things like that just get me excited when you're looking at the rankings and with college football, because this wasn't a typical year.
Yeah, exactly. There's a parity. I feel like it made it a lot more exciting because it wasn't like chalk every weekend where like, oh, this team's gonna blow this team out, because things were just. And I feel like a lot of it was because of COVID. Like a lot of teams, like for instance, Utah in the Pac-12, they had a lot of fifth-year seniors, like granted the extra year eligibility, and that kind of helped balance out the talent gap between them and Oregon. They pushed Oregon around.
Yeah, it was a fun year, and I'm excited for the playoffs. But I appreciate you coming on, man. Go follow College Football Talk Daily on Twitter for all your college football news. And then give a plug for the podcast as well. Go check that out. So it's a fun listen.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on. Once you stop recording, I do have a quick story for you if you have time.
Yeah, absolutely. But so what's the name of the podcast? Just let everybody know where they can find it and stuff.
Oh, okay. So our podcast is This Week in College Football by CFB Talk Daily. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and pretty much every other podcasting platform.
Great. Go check that out. And again, College Football Talk Daily on Twitter. Thank you for listening to this episode of the My Parents Office podcast, and stay tuned for our episodes that are coming out this week. Thank you.